I'm gonna try this one more time. Let's say good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Township of Georgian Bay Committee of the Whole meeting for Tuesday, April 2023. And I'd like to call this meeting to order at 10:04. I'm going to go forego a land acknowledgement because I read one an hour ago. I'm going to ask council if there's any declarations of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest. And seeing none, we'll go straight into our staff report, and that is the 2022 annual report from our Fire and Emergency Services Department. Chief Van Dam, over to you, please, sir.
Morning, everyone.
I think it.
This is our annual report coming back.
Excuse me, sir, do you have a mic on?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, this is our annual report coming back. Was missed the last couple of years with COVID issues. So it was tough to stay caught up with dealing with all of that. So one of the big things for me with this year was to get that back online. So council understands what the fire service has been doing and being able to see some trends so that you can make informed decisions going forward. So we'll get right into it.
Would you want us to ask questions as you go along or wait until the end, sir?
That's for me, doesn't matter. I'm okay with it asking the questions as we go. Then we're on the topic. We might be able to do it instead of jumping back and forth all over the place at the end. So,
okay, thank you.
Okay. Next slide, please. So this is a slide is just quickly to give you a rough idea about what's happening about the township. Our population has increased by 36%. What is really interesting is that 58% of our population is over the age of 55. That has increased since the last census. And then we talk roughly about our lakes and bridges and some of those things that will be part of our community risk assessment going forward. Next slide.
I would like to ask a question on this slide, actually, and that's the very last line. 22,500 structures are winterized. I find that, I don't know where that comes from, because I find that a very surprising statistic, because if that means that's an average of, let's call it 4 structures per property, and I'm really ballparking. And I think I can't believe that.
So I can tell you where it comes from, and
Please.
that comes from our finance department.
And Julie's not here.
And Colleen is the one who looks after the assessment and feeds me that information.
It's a very curious figure. Yeah, and an impact probably doesn't know the difference between summer and winter, I'm guessing. So I think that my guess is that's how many average structures, that's how many structures we have. They may or may not be winterized. Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, I think it would maybe be helpful to you, Tony, is there's some stats coming out from Graham Good at the district, and just the first line, the population is 3441. That's census. Our population is 19,000. So I think, we need to tell the full story, not a portion. I'm seeing other stats here that I know there aren't 3,600 seasonal residences. There might be 3,600 properties, but that's very different because a lot of them are vacant and will remain vacant because they're not open space and on it goes. So It's a real challenge for us because we have so many different property categories. So I'm not criticizing in the least. It's hard to get our hands around certain numbers, but I think a lot of it will be available in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Thank
Yeah,
you.
we've been working with Graham for the last couple of years about trying to tighten up these stats, and so well aware of what Graham's work that he's been doing. So we look forward to bringing it into our community risk assessment as it comes available.
So, you know, I've been working with them in the last few months to get it much more defined so that we can see more accurate figures. Thank you.
Next slide. So just a quick about the assessment of the township, the residential assessment, our commercial assessment was 118,529,829 for commercial and industrial. The building department issued 540 permits in 2002, and you can see the construction value of that. So there is some I'm going to say some dollar amounts that needs to be protected within the municipality, and we're trying our best to do that. Building department issued 342 permits to deal with single family dwellings. And the construction value of that was 49740,920.
Please.
Tony, thank you for that. And it's interesting. We have, in fact, about 118, I think you said, or 120 million, 118 million in commercial values and properties out of 2.9 billion. I think is what we see here. So what is that percentage, Mr. Mayor? You're really good at this stuff. 1/3 of 1%. So it's interesting for us to at least acknowledge that this is who we are and what we have. So thank you. It's good information.
Question about the building permits, Miss CBO. Yeah, I know you're trying to duck, but I'm confused, like.
Are you talking about for 2022?
Because I'm wondering whether that 342 is within the 540 or it's in addition to the 540
No.
within, okay. All right, thank you. We got to get on to what you actually do, Tony. Get past the step.
Next slide. Okay. So the township's a large amount of scenic water areas that's provided a great location to vacation and retire. This has been observed in the increase of people that are happening during the summer months, and that comes to our seasonal population of almost 19,000. The district of Muskoka and the township have 153 kilometers of roadway, which is maintained by the township. And most of these roadways are at the 60-kilometer-an-hour, I'm gonna say rate of speed. There's 90 kilometers of Highway 400, which provides access to the township and is a well-used highway, and has been a generator of calls for the department in the past. I like to call Highway 400 the main street, because if we close the main street, we create a lot of issues for residents not being able to get to and from their properties, and create quite a long detour, shall we say, with that. So Highway 400 is a major part that we are constantly monitoring, working with police to limit when we have to, and that kind of stuff. So with that Highway 400, there's 31 provincial roadway bridges, which could be as part of our critical infrastructure. If we lose one of those bridges, how does that affect our residents and all of that kind of stuff? So we pay attention to that as well. The the district has 6 bridges, and there's currently 15 dams operating within the township.
How about committee of the whole? Well, I'm just gonna let everybody speak up without going through the chair. I think that'd be the most convenient for this conversation. But you do have to turn on your mic if you want to speak. I have to have some rules. That makes me feel better.
Councillor Predko, he hasn't had too many questions, so I'll come in after.
Well, and mine's an easy one. Of these 15 dams, they're primarily fixed dams. They're not controllable dams.
And they aren't beaver dams.
I did
Should
not
count
go out
those
and
too,
count the
shouldn't we?
beaver dams. However, some of them are operating dams owned by OPG, say at the Big Chute. And then you have the dams here on part of the Trent Severn, which they control.
And go home like,
So the actual numbers of which ones are controllable and all of that, I don't have that number offhand.
okay. And does it make a difference for you in terms of safety? I mean, if it's just a dam, there's not much you can do about it. So
For the most part, the monitoring of the dam is just, I'm gonna say, what happens if it fails? What's the catastrophic piece that might come out of that? And for the most part, we don't have a lot of catastrophic that we're potentially going to lose lives. And meeting with the OPG and all of that every year, we have a very good working relationship that they tell us that this bridge, a couple of years ago, when we had the big flood that went through Bracebridge, we had a risk at the Bala Dam that we were well aware of, that if that failed, we did the modeling of what's that going to affect people in the township. And it was great news was it was going to be very little. So that's been our most recent conversation with the dam. So.
Turn my mic on and suggest that, if I could suggest this to you, that Councillor Jarvis needs some help with you giving a damn about what he has to say. But quick question, Highway 400 is actually a Trans-Canada highway, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It's a piece of the Trans-Canada highway. It's turns into the Trans-Canada at the Vasey Road. Highway 12 comes onto there and then
Okay.
goes up. Yes.
So it's the main route across Canada.
It's a portion of it. Highway 11 is part of the Trans-Canada. There's portions of it that are part of the Trans-Canada as
Oh.
well.
I didn't realize that.
17. So if you do a Google map, you'll usually see the Trans-Canada logo on there.
Okay, thank you.
Another question is, is there any floodplain mapping for the area at this time?
Yes,
Okay, so you have access to that.
correct.
And then one helpful statistic, which I think might be difficult to get, I think just from the standpoint of everything else that you provide in the way of critical services, if you knew how much shoreline you were dealing with and you had that as a stat, it would be kind of an interesting one to have, because it's a significant amount of land you've sort of got to get around if you're going to be fighting wildfires or cottage fires or whatever else.
I do believe I do have that stat.
It'd be neat to have.
It
that.
might not be in this presentation.
It's okay.
Keeping in mind, to keep in mind too, that we also have some shoreline within some neighboring municipalities that we're protecting. Muskoka Lakes up the Trent Severn waterway and portions of Severn. So we're actually protecting a bit more than that, but that's our township.
The question for the chief. Okay. You've given us a lot of stats and information on roads and bridges and dams and everything else. Probably one of the most important statistics is the number of kilometers of navigable channeled waterways for Transport Canada. which is really the roadways to all of our island residents, which the fire department really has a lot to do with. They're constantly out there on those waterways. So I'm just wondering if that, as a part of this report in the future, that we could bring attention to the number of kilometers of navigable channels we have to giving you access to the properties on Georgian Bay.
That'll be a great stat for Graham to find for me, so I will ask him for that one.
I was going to mention that we have 50 slides to get through. So as we look at each line.
So a little bit about the fire department. The department is authorized to have 60 members. We're currently sitting at 44. We operate out of 3 fire stations. We have 3 pumpers, 1 pumper tanker, 2 tankers, and then 4 support vehicles and 3 marine vessels. The department currently trains twice a month. We have additional courses as they become available, and there was 2,964 hours spent on training in 2022. We're currently working to meet the certification legislation as per the regulations. 39 of our staff members are certified as firefighters level 1 and 2 already. So that's a great thing. And our current recruits to get us up to that number were involved this past weekend in Port Sydney with a number of other departments from the district doing their hazmat training piece, and they'll be writing their test on the 19th of April. And then we should, if everybody is successful, we'll have everybody certified as firefighters 1 and 2.
Question for you, Chief. Out of your 44 firefighters, can you tell us how many you have trained in cold water rescue, or how many firefighters do we have that are certified in cold water rescue?
So we only currently have 1 firefighter who's trained and certified in ice water rescue. And that will be going forward. We've done training on it, but with the new certification just coming in, now we have to meet that certification, and that will be a priority in the next couple of years, is to get staff certified to that.
I figured it might have been because I've been reading up on it. I'm just wondering if there's budgetary concerns that we need to address or be prepared for.
To be honest with you, going forward, I believe that half our staff, we will be challenging the provincial exam. And I'm hopeful that half of our staff will pass that exam and their practical exam, just from the training that they've had in the past and all of that. And that will make us, that's going to help out quite dramatically moving forward.
That's huge.
And then we are working with, looking at proposals with SFA, the Southwest Fire Academy, to get the rest of our staff trained to be able to perform that service.
Thank you.
3,015 staff hours were recorded last year for emergency response. Next slide. So the fire service through council has a mission statement. It was approved as part of the bylaw. And that's our mission statement. We like to review it every once in a while to keep us focused on why we're actually here and the service that we provide. Next slide. Core services. So this is the services that the fire service provides to the residents of the township, and it was approved by council in the 2019 -067 bylaw. As part of the master fire plan, we will be reviewing that and reviewing the services that we do because of certification and the cost that's associated with it. We will be reviewing those services, and it may not be cost effective for us to provide that service going forward. So some of the basic, sorry, I'm just getting an email here. We had a water main break here in in Port Saffron, so I'm just trying to. Some of the basic, so we do firefighting interior and exterior. Rural water firefighting operations, so that includes our tanker operations, our marine firefighting services, which is puts a whole different challenge on that. Vehicle firefighting, our grass and bush firefighting, tiered medical responses, automatic mutual aid services. We do ambulance and police assistance services. So you had your presentation from the OPP yesterday. And they say when they call on the other agencies, we've had to provide OPP officers escorts out to a couple calls last year. When the Marine officers were off duty, they can get on our boat quicker. We can deploy quickly, and so they've used that 2 times last year. We evaluate those calls very quickly to find out where are you taking us and what are we getting involved in before we commit to it. But we've had to take them out several times, especially when they get north of the Big Chute, when they're going into that area, Georgia Bay, because the boat has to now be pulled from Midland and trailered out here and deployed. We can deploy that much quicker. So there's some of the other ones: vehicle accidents, vehicle extrication, transportation incidents, some planes making unscheduled landings, I'm going to say, in the water, and that type of stuff. So you can see there's a fair amount. Next slide.
For hazardous material incidents, that is something that you take direction from district or from other levels, or is that something that's in our plan itself?
It's in our plan itself. So anything that's hazardous materials, our first priority is life safety. And we'll only perform. So there's 3 different levels of hazardous materials. One is awareness, so that you're able to identify that it's a hazardous material event. The second one is operations. That's what this fire service in Georgia Bay does. So basically that is recognize, set perimeters of safe zones, hot zones, that type of stuff. And then we do deconning. As for actually going up and I'm going to say clean up, we won't touch that. If it's a simple, you can have a gas tank leaking at the gas station next door, becomes a hazardous material event. If we can plug that fairly quickly, then yes, we will. But if it's a tanker truck flipped over on Highway 400, then it's basically we set the perimeter and monitor, advise spills actions, see track where the material's going, so that if we need to advise cottagers not to be taking water from the lake and that type of stuff. Confined space rescue. We're at the awareness level. We hope to stay there. We don't see a lot of trenches in solid rock collapsing, but we need to be prepared and dealing with it if it comes about. We will call on other expertise to come in, and we'll worry about those costs going forward. Technical rescue, for the most part, we are at the awareness level. We will not do high angle rescue. We're not trained. We only have a couple areas within the municipality where it is a real concern, but we do provide low angle. So pulling somebody back up a slope or something to that extent, we will do. We currently our community emergency plan, we partake in that and maintain that. And then we have several people within the department who are now assistants to the fire marshal. And then that gives them authority that we can enter people's properties under certain conditions without warrants and that type of stuff. Next slide. We also have an emergency management program that was approved by council in 2017. So it establishes an emergency management program committee. With that, we have an emergency management coordinator, which is myself, and then we have alternates so that if I'm not here, we do have somebody who can fill that responsibility. Emergency response plan, we have an operations center. Information, we've had staff trained to provide emergency information. Then as part of that, we must train on our emergency plan every year. We must exercise that plan every year. And the province reviews, or we must review and update the plan. And that's usually minimum of a yearly. With staff turnover, it gets done sometimes a little quicker than that. But then we must also send that off to Emergency Management Ontario. And then they, I'm going to say, review our exercise and all of that. Next slide, please. As you can see, our emergency plan must work with the District of Muskoka's emergency plan, and that is now the area of focus, is trying to get that the two plans will do this so that we don't have concerns. We're looking at joint exercises so that if it is a large scale, that we can call upon the district and make sure that it's all going to fall into alignment without trying to come into trying to learn and go. Doesn't usually work too well during a crisis. So we must report to the Ontario government of our compliance. We are waiting for our written approval for the 2022. They were actually here for our training this year and monitored it, and we're very, very happy, and have actually taken a couple things from our exercise and are starting to move that province-wide and making some recommendations. So that was a very good piece. We spent 84 hours of staff time, and that's not fire department, that is senior management staff time with that. And we do that under, we contact Lumex, and it's a company that comes in and does that. And that gives us our third party verification and makes our compliance very easy for that piece.
Chief, are you guys able to issue those Amber Alerts, or is that a higher level that does that?
So the Amber Alert can only be done by the Ontario Provincial Police. So the fire service can't, emergency management can't, it's all done through the RC. In the province of Ontario, it's the OPP who are doing it. Canada-wide, it's the RCMP that can do it. So for example, if Peel Regional Police want to issue an Amber Alert, they go through the Ontario Provincial Police, and it goes through I'm going to say a checklist to do it. We have a Voyant alert that we can, from the township's perspective, we can send out an emergency alert through Voyant Alert. So if we have a tanker flipped over on Highway 400 and we want to put out a notice of stay in your building and close your windows and all of that, we can send that out as long as people subscribe to Voyant Alert.
So with that incident last May started out in the water, Freddie Channel, and moved in towards Honey Harbor Channel that involved emergency response by the OPP. I know that there seemed to be a struggle in letting people know what was going on and to lock down. Would that have been something that the Amber Alert should have applied to, or is there any way in review that there's something to be done for future situations like that?
Thanks for asking that question. I can tell you that there was a communication breakdown between the OPP and say the township. Didn't follow the emergency plan and the protocols that are in place.
Oh.
That was addressed as soon as I was made aware of it. The incident commander of that wasn't aware of what was going on in the background. So the OPP had some internal issues that they were going to resolve, and the OPP is aware of the Voyant alert that we can send messaging out. I reiterate that it's only going to go to the people who subscribe to it.
Yeah,
Other than that, it's social media, reaching out to counselors and having them do it, but it needs to go through a controlled piece so we don't get mixed messaging going out. And that was with my meeting with the OPP. That's hopefully we have that resolved for the next issue.
which we won't have presumably.
I hope
Okay,
so.
Thanks.
Mr. Van Dam, I believe council in December, maybe January, had requested updates from your department with respect to power outages. What happened to that? Are we still, I don't believe I've received any since. Was it, I'm sorry, hydro, yes, thank you. With regards to power outages, no, we were informed by, if memory serves me correctly, we were informed by Mr. Van Dam that he receives notices and he would distribute them out via email to us as an outage occurred. And I believe to date, I haven't received any. So just curious, are we still thinking about doing that? And if so, when could we expect that? Thank you.
So we're waiting for the representative from Hydro One to make a presentation to council. They were coming forward and hopefully creating that you would get it directly from them. So if I'm on vacation, it wouldn't get missed. So the person, her name is drawing a blank on me right now, has been asked to come to council and working with the clerk to set that date, and then we can ask those questions directly.
Okay. May I make a suggestion in the interim? Would it be possible that you forward any updates to the respective counselor in that particular ward? Or is that too cumbersome for you?
It creates a problem, say on weekends and stuff. But one of the problems that has come out is that some of the alerts that are going out for small outages, we're not being made aware of. As we've been trying to pay attention a little more to the needs of the residents to get that, we're finding we're not getting all of them. They're just being posted on the website and we're not being alerted. So that is one of the questions that was asked of that representative, and she's taken it back to her team, and we are hoping to get that answer when she does the presentation in front of council.
Could IT possibly create a profile account that then aggregates out to all counselors and have Hydro One send to that particular email address? And that would include you, of course, so you're aware and your department is aware. So this way we wouldn't require you, if in case you were on vacation, to distribute accordingly.
They're working on trying to get, all of our accounts that the township has, trying to get all of them into a one email thing. So that is part of what we've looked at. It's just, we're waiting on their end to tell us if they're capable of doing it, or whether we have to register every individual bill site that we have. So the Director of Public Works and myself have been working on that one for the sake of, if it's the arena facility or if it's one of the other facilities, that he's aware that his facilities are I'm going to say down. So we're working on that. I'm not quite sure where that's going to go yet, but we're working towards it. It's yes. So you have to give, when you register, you have to give them the account that you're looking for. So then I guess their generation of emails is generated from people that are on that, it goes out. So for the township, there wasn't a piece that when it comes out dramatically, So now that's where we started to find out that there's areas within the township we weren't getting it. So at 3 o'clock in the morning, I'm not receiving that text that we were outage, and then it becomes a thing that we have to be checking that map all the time. So we've brought that to their attention, and we're waiting for them to get back to us, and we'll see where it goes when she comes towards us.
Do we happen to know when she'll be coming, or do we have any understanding as to rough timeline? Or who's running with us, out of curiosity?
Given recent correspondence between us and Hydro, I do not believe they have intentions of attending anymore.
Oh, okay, well, that changes the calculus somewhat. And given the fact that we don't have a representative coming to from Hydro One, would there be a workaround on how we could get emails? And the reason why I ask this question is I actually have numerous ratepayers reach out to me, specifically on the Hydro One outage issues. I had one, I think, early last week or late last week, requesting information on outages as well. And I'd like to be able to aggregate that out to the community.
I'm not sure. Sorry. Yeah, this is an added level of service now that we're trying to manage something that is out of our purview. So, you know, if there is a subdivision that is out of power, short of it being a significant event, in which case emergency services will come in and maybe set up some temporary, you know, power, you know, backup generator system. We're kind of, I'm not sure what council is asking of staff to manage if there's a power outage in the community, other than, you know, letting Hydro do their thing.
Sorry, allow me to address a misconception, perhaps, and clarify. Wasn't asking for us to manage the outage itself, rather just a notification that there's an outage exists. And I think we can really simplify this. Perhaps our IT team can forward the emails that Mr. Van Dam is receiving from Hydro directly to councillors. You know, we can aggregate out the emails that Hydro does notify us. Again, happy to have waited for Hydro, but given the fact that Hydro is not coming now, as we've learned today, perhaps we can look into an alternative whereby council is getting updates.
I don't know,
I will,
from personal experience, I found the hydro outage map very useful. That sometimes when I hear of storms, I go to the hydro outage map, and they will generally show me that there's 5 or 100 outages, and then you scroll on down and you find out that one outage may be 5 people, another outage may be 500. I do find that sort of resource very informative. But But I think we should probably get this conversation back to our emergency services.
I will do some follow-up with Hydro and see what has transpired, working with the clerk, and see if I can get that back on track.
Thank you.
I hate to do this, but I have one more question before we leave this slide. In terms of notifying residents of a large scale emergency covered in the emergency response plan, I believe within the castle legislation, there's an exemption for health and safety notifications that we don't need we don't need their explicit permission to email, and maybe that's something that we could follow up with later. So I know the Voyant application sends out a notification, but only to people who have subscribed to that particular item. But I think for emergency situations, castle legislation has an exception to reach out to everyone.
There is a program that we can request the province of Ontario to put out. It's like the weather alerts. But I can't just call up and say, do this, do that, do this. It's a process through the Ontario government that I have to go through.
Thank you.
Have to get caught back up to you. Fire prevention and public education. So I will tell council that we have 3 lines of defense that we work from. The first one is public education. And if we can, I'm gonna say, educate people not to have that fire or do something to be able to stop it before it starts. That's our first line of defense that we want to take. The second line that we're going to take is enforcement. So that's through inspections, being made aware of a issue that we need to do, that we'll go out and do an inspection, and if enforcement needs to happen, then we'll start to do that. And our third line of defense is our actual emergency response, and it's our most costly. So if we can eliminate the fires through fire prevention and public education, that's a great thing. So we're going to be refocusing here now that COVID is done, and getting back out, that we can interact with the public. And we've done that already this year on several occasions. So that's a good thing going forward.
On fire education, safety education, the government of Canada has a Fire Smart program, which is, I guess the provinces have all piggybacked on top of that as well, from a public awareness and safety and measures that they can take to protect their property from particularly wildfires. Is that something that is incorporated into any of our educational materials? And I'm asking because some of the messaging in there is contrary to what we ask for people to do in their shoreline naturalization.
That's correct. So it's interesting that you asked that question. Chad was sent to the deputy fire chief was sent to a seminar on the Fire Smart program, has all the materials and all of that now, and now we're doing evaluations on it, where it conflicts with our bylaws and all of that, to see whether we have room for movement, whether we can come up with a high, yeah. So as part of saying that we're part of the Fire Smart program entirely, not at this time, but we are reviewing it, and we have used pieces of it in the past to try to help with that education.
Thank you.
So the entire staff, as we try to, that everybody's pieces to use those 3 lines of defense, and so it's not just 1 or 2 people that are out there. The entire staff is out there. We use them going to some of our events to promote the education and give those safety messages out there. Our staff goes out during calls and stuff, and we do smoke alarm and carbon monoxide checks. So we did 22 checks were completed in 2022. We were in the schools. I'm going to say we were in the schools, but it wasn't as our normal pieces that we do in there. Hopefully we'll get back to that, but we're in there, we're doing fire drills, and we did 2 education sessions within the schools. Community events with COVID-19 were limited. However, we did get to 3 cottage associations, and we're able to provide some messaging for them. For Fire Prevention Week in October, most of our education is through the social media at that point, because most of our summer residents have left and are not around during the week at that time of year. We did some emergency preparedness, which is in May, and we did some media posts, did some work with the Merck group from the District of Muskoka, and we did some education that way. And then carbon monoxide awareness week. We did some of that, and when we did the social media, because now have the ability to track it. We did 2,587 people that we were able to touch with our social media posts. Going out, next slide. Inspections and enforcement, which is our second line of defense.
Can I just ask a question here?
Yep.
I just wanted to connect a couple of dots here. I appreciate the coverage on social media, but given what you've provided information at the beginning of your report of the aging demographic, are not social media people and are not likely owners of the properties. And so coverage of that community is probably of little value. And I think we always want to be connecting these dots of the aging population are not social media participants. And so we don't want to believe that we're actually communicating with the community by going out through social media. Thank you.
Your point's taken. With COVID, that was basically our only means that we could do that. I will tell you the highest piece of education to getting messages to seniors is through our school children. That the Ontario Fire Service has done the study on it because there's not a grandparent in the world that will argue with their children about that you need to check your smoke alarm or you. So if we've used that to our advantage, that we get them and we go and say, when you go home, remind grandpa and grandpa, and that has been historically the best piece of education that we can get out there. With COVID-19, it was very limited when we could get out to our seniors groups. They're starting to meet again, and we've purchased some of our public education materials to meet their needs. Usually when we get the seniors out, when we tell them we're giving them something for free, and whether it's a deck of cards with fire prevention messages or a spatula that watch what you're cooking, we usually get a good turnout for those.
Yeah, I just, again, want to make sure that we're connecting dots. Grandchildren of water access properties, seasonal residents aren't going to be a channel of communication. Declaring conflict of interest, the library is probably one of the best channels of communication for seasonal residents. We have some of the highest percentage of coverage through the library. And I would encourage you to consider leveraging the library and their communications capabilities when we talk about reaching out in this education process. Thank you.
So thanks, Councillor. I can tell you that we are working with the library, and we were just in the libraries this past month, and we did MacTier, Honey Harbor, and Port Severn. We did an education session. So
I could just add in sort of not piling on per se, but the majority of our residents that are seasonal are, I guess we'd call them seniors. They could be anywhere from 55 to whatever, 100. But the truth is that most of them are not terribly interested in social media, and continue to encourage our township to get all the email information possible for our residents. And by the way, those are the same people that own the properties. Our audience is a mature audience, and we need to communicate with them the way they would be listening. Thank you.
But don't stop the social media, because my 92-year-old parents still use Facebook, Twitter, and
I was just gonna say, I know a lot of grandparents who are on social media simply because that's how they reach their grandchildren. To your point about the grandchildren being a source of education.
we're working with all of the Muskoka fire departments now, and we're drawing what we're called targeted marketing and all of that. So the communications department from the district and each one of the municipalities are working together to get that message out for us. They're the communication experts, and we need to utilize them. So, but all points that are well taken. So our first, with compliance, we have several pieces of legislation that we are obligated to ask people to do and perform. So we try to, with ensuring compliance, our first step is education. And then as we get part of our enforcement, I'm glad to say that most people within the municipality, when they're made aware of it and that they need to fix something, they do it voluntarily and they get it done. We check back with them after a period of time and it's all remedied and fixed. There were 6 incidents where we took people to court last year, and most of that of those were for burning materials that they're not supposed to, and they've had previous warnings or that type of stuff. We're legislated that we must provide inspections if somebody requests a inspection or a complaint comes in, then we're obligated, we have to do it. A total of 7 fire and life safety inspections were conducted in 2002 as a result of requests and complaints. And then sometimes that when we attend a residence or a business for an emergency and we obviously there's something obvious to us that's wrong, then we have an obligation now that we have to follow up and conduct an inspection and get that fixed. We've started the getting our inspections back onto track. For this year, last year we did 2 fire safety plans that were reviewed and approved. And then we're now partaking in the some planning discussions regarding some subdivisions and that. So we've partake in some of that and sitting down with staff also to try to ensure that we're can put pieces to make the fire service I'm going to say avoid costs for the future.
Just follow up on that, then after what we've just gone through with Oak Bay, are we going to be looking at, I guess, I mean, Severn Heights comes to mind, but would you be recommending that they make their roads wider so we don't have these issues that we're running into at Oak Bay?
We have had some discussions about creating some standards for within the municipality.
Okay.
As you are all aware, this becomes very difficult when you have the district approving certain things and trying to get all of that buy-in. However, we've had a couple discussions with the district and they've been very in favor of I'm going to say the sprinklers.
Oh, yeah.
Concept. So small wins,
Okay.
hopefully we'll get there.
Thank you.
Next slide. So 28 fire code violations were noted in 2022. 26 of those have been corrected. The other 2 violations were to be repaired by the end of March. And I don't know if Chad's been back out to see if they were corrected or not yet. So, but when the making of this report, there was still 2 violations outstanding.
And this is a combination of residential and business properties?
I can tell you that very little inspections get done of residential properties. It's mostly commercial, schools, I'm going to say places of gathering. We also make fire safety recommendations that we may tell somebody, you know, that's not a good spot to do this, and but we don't have the legislation to back it up to say you must move that. So we've provided a number of those as well. Most people care about it. One of the marketing tools is that we utilize as children. If your grandchildren are here, do you really want to be doing that here? And it's amazing how that will impact, and we do get some favorable pieces with that. So next slide. So we're getting into training. So currently the department trains twice monthly for approximately 2.5 hours. So during the summer months, sometimes we stretch it to 3. But in the winter times, it goes back down to say 2, 1.5, depending on whatever that topic is. So the new recruits now, to meet the certification, they're roughly training 192 hours before they're able to respond. So it takes 6 months of training every other weekend, and they're doing about 16 hours. Plus they're training on Tuesday nights with our regular staff. So just because we have what the Ontario regulation is for the fire regulations, there's also other certification courses that we have to take as well. And just to name some of them is first aid, forest firefighting, marine vessel training, takes up a fair amount of staff time because of the Georgian Bay waters. We have to be Med A3 trained because it is a workboat. And there's portions of Georgian Bay where we have to have our special, our SVOP, our special vessel operators permit. So with that, those aren't included in the Ontario fire regulations, but things that we need to do. And that's just to name a few. Last year for total training hours was 2,964. Next slide.
In your training of your recruits, by the time they're fully certified firefighters, what's your estimated cost per trainee to get them ready? You have that?
I don't have that for this year's. We've done it in the past.
Okay.
And you're running about $5,400 is what it was some previous years. But I didn't do it this year.
Okay, thank you.
I do track it. Next slide. Joint ventures that we're doing with training. So with working with other District of Muskoka fire departments. A lot of that has started to take place in the last 5 years. Our recruit trainings, we have certain training sessions where they all train together instead of trying to do it in small pieces. And then they do some training here. And hazmat training, for example, was last weekend. They were in Port Sydney training with Huntsville and Muskoka Lake. So all 3 departments were training them on the hazmat. We also work with Tay, Tiny, and Midland for some joint training. So for example, Georgian Bay, we provide driver licensing training that we've been working towards, and we provide the forest fire training to all of those departments. They come here and then we send staff there for, I'm going to say, incident command training and that type of stuff. Next slide. Just to give you a quick rundown of what additional training was done above and beyond the monthly training. So 3 fire officers met their Fire Officer 1 training. So they have to be certified to be able to be a supervisor going forward in the new regulations. So 3 of them completed that. We had 4 firefighters receive training on mental health. I can tell you that this is becoming even more and more of an issue. This past weekend, we had a member of the fire service attended a relative, and the amount of time that takes to deal with that really has intensified and is taking a lot of time with it. And now as part of it is we're going to calls dealing with people with mental health issues is, I'm gonna say, taking up more time and more trainings required on our staff to be able, they're gonna say, to recognize and de-escalate things as quick as possible, which 10 years ago, that wasn't even on our radar. 6 firefighters received forest fire training, their SP 103. One firefighter received some public information officer training. 4 firefighters received their fire instructor. 8 firefighters received their legislation. And then we had 1 fire received to fire inspector 1, and 1 firefighter received their parts 3 and 5 of the fire code for enforcement.
Yeah, could you explain to us what receiving your legislation means? I'm unfamiliar with that term.
So we have to train with all of the legislation that the fire service touches. So fire code, building code, we have a quick, I'm gonna say, crash course is what they do. It's provided by the Ontario Fire Marshal's office. And it's roughly a 16-hour course where they go through different pieces of legislation. So if we have a spill, for example, we have an obligation that we have to contact spills action. And what are we obligated to do with that? Children's Aid Society, if we come into a situation where we suspect abuse or anything like that, we have an obligation that we have to report that to the police. And it's to give them all of that rough ideas of what they could be exposed to and where this has to go. So for example, the Technical Safety Standards Association, if we have an elevator event, fortunately, we don't have a lot. We have to contact that. If it's an electrical, we have to contact the Electrical Safety Authority. So there's so many pieces of legislation that we touch. It's to give them an education on that. Some cost savings initiatives. I know that that was been a piece of the last budget, so we decided to add some of that into this report for this year, just to make sure that we have been, you are aware that we have been trying to look for cost effectiveness and managing that funds. So we purchased bunker gear with other departments. We currently only buy 7 sets a year. And you don't get any price break with that. However, in 2016, we started purchasing through the Simcoe County Fire Group there, and they're buying like 100 suits, and you get a significant price break when we're buying that. The only downfall is that we have to drive to Oromadani or Springwater or something like that to pick up our delivery when it gets here. But I think we can go with that cost for what we've saved. Fire truck pump testing, we're obligated to test our pumps yearly. And we work with Tiny Tay, Midland and Penetang, and we take our trucks there and we have an individual that performs that. We don't save a ton of money. However, we don't end up now paying for costs for travel, accommodation and all of that stuff, because it's being divided amongst all of us. We only get a very small sliver of that. So another thing that we've done is there's a foam bank that's in the Midland Fire Station. So instead of us owning 50 pails of foam and trying to rotate it all the time, we have foam on the trucks. We carry, I have about 5 pails here in Port Severn that we can take up to a fire if it's needed quickly. But if we need more than that, we just go to Midland, we pick up whatever we need, or we call Midland if it's an emergency, and they'll throw it in a pickup truck and bring it to us. So we don't have that big expenditure of foam sitting here.
Pail of foam, is that like you just throw a pail of foam on a fire? Sorry.
It's a 5 gallon pail, and as we're spraying water, we have tanks on board of the pumps that holds 20 gallons, and that mixes with the water and creates,
Yeah, I was having
depending on what type of fire you're dealing with, sometimes it's 6% concentration, sometimes it's 1 if we're just trying to, it will soak into the wood.
Right, no, so
More.
I was imagining some bucket brigade with buckets. Okay, thank you.
We're past those days. I don't think I could keep up. So we've looked at purchasing education materials. So with the North Simcoe Group, we're a joint owner in Sparky the dog outfit, and there's a trailer that we've used for public education sessions. So we're a partnership in that. And then we also have partnerships with our fit testing equipment that we have to do for certification, and our self-contained breathing apparatus. So we were at one point, this department had 36 self-contained breathing apparatus. We're down to 18, and that's because we have joint purchasing with them. And if we need supplies, we can get it from our neighbors quickly. The chances of all 4 of our neighbors having great big fires at the same time is going to be a major problem if it happens. So
You've been at this for more than an hour. Do you need a stand up and turn around before you keep on going? I mean, I don't even think you're halfway through your slides yet.
that's up to council. I can speed it up if you want to.
I think that might make sense,
Okay,
and we'll encourage council to try to keep their questions to good ones.
okay. Be careful what you ask for. You just might get it. The rental cost may be that you end up in that outfit at some other public education. So you can see, next slide, some of our investments. I'm going to take it that council has read most of this. And if is there anything you want to discuss on that?
I think you did, I saw a point in there that you were getting some requests for additional cottage pump.
Yep, that's in the next slide.
Sorry. I'll,
Cottage pump program. So you're well aware of that, as that was part of, I'm gonna say, our budget discussions. So if the additional pumps, we've received several requests with it. In the past, sometimes we agree that a pump may be necessary there. Some people, sometimes it's everybody wants their own pumps, and sorry, we can't afford that.
so just a perhaps not so dumb question, but maybe it's a trust question. I have a pump on my property, township managed. And it's actually fun seeing the big giant fireboat come in with lots of staff on it to, certify it in the spring and winterize it in the winter. But I'm kind of thinking that I have a lot of skills that could probably do all of that and save the town a whole lot of money. And is there any path to kind of certifying or training residents who have these things on their property, and then rather than having a big expensive process, just have kind of a light go around and inspect that they do the job right, kind of thing? Is there any path of value there?
One of the problems is the risk of liability. And that we would have to take that to our insurer and see where our premiums are going to go with that one. That is the biggest reason going forward, because of why we do it twice a year now, is that a number of pumps were stolen. In 2016, when we did the original, I'm going to say, audit, when I got here, I think it was in 17, we were being advised that there was a number of pumps that were gone missing. We had docks, fuel gets stolen quite often. So that's why it got into it, that we had pumps that were damaged. So we anticipated that it was being done to go that route. I'm not saying we can't look at it, but that gives you some of the reasons why it's gone to where it is today.
Okay, just thinking of leveraging the natural desire of many people in the community to offer to help out and do things where they can. And I think there's a lot of people that would like to do that.
I think we would love for, associations and residents to take that on. And I think that was part of the discussion during budget time is it's yours with, as soon as we maintain ownership of that, then the associated risk and liability and inspection and maintenance and so on. So I know, for example, in the archipelago, cottage associations have their own pumps. They look after their own, their own pumps. So if council wants to explore that again, then.
And I do know on Go Home Lake where we have 6 municipal pumps, there are also probably another 20 private pumps that are around the lake, but I think the, excuse me, comfort and of having more pumps on the lake rather than just the private pumps that people have in their boathouse or wherever, and other people don't know it's there. It's a very important feature on the lake especially when there's an emergency. And that just kind of leads me, I know you've talked to community outreach and on your other slides previously, but fire pump training on the lakes with the cottage associations is another opportunity for getting out in the community. And while I know you offer pump training for the municipal pumps, if somebody brought their personal pump because they bought it and they never used it and they don't know how to use it, would you guys encourage them to bring their pump? And then, because that's something that I think would be helpful when we're promoting this at, cottage associations.
100%. Firefighting, operating the pump was one thing, but doing it in a safe manner, that is my biggest scare. I've witnessed it on Go Home Lake where I have a private citizen fighting a fire in flip-flops, standing on above a hydro line that's buried and it's arcing and he doesn't realize it's alive because he didn't know. And that's the piece that scares me.
No, that's scary. And so a very quick personal anecdote. When I was on the Cottage Association and Go Home Lake, one of the things that we did was go around in the middle of the summer to make sure all of the pumps had gas in them and that the mice hadn't eaten through the hoses. And it got that none of the pumps were working. And I got to about the 5th one. And then the owner said, you have to prime it first. So I had to go back and do it again. But anyway, that's why training is important.
So just cost initiatives with this program here. Chad today is in City of Aurelia picking up 50 lengths of hose that we've had donated to us by joint partnerships to keep that pump program. We haven't had to buy hose for the cottage program since 2019. So we're out there, we're doing what we can to do that, but we just got the call today that they're replacing hose in a facility and there's 50 lengths of hose here, but you gotta, when they call, we have to go. So that's one of those. Chad was going this morning to do that. So next slide. So revenue, just give you an idea of where the revenue is going. You've seen it. If we can go to the next slide. You can see that the revenue is the black line, that is the trend line. We're trending up. The next one is MTO, is our calls on MTO, and the blue line is our medical responses. Those are our 3, say top generating revenues that we've had it. Since we've had the admin assistant, our revenues are climbing because we have the people now to chase it, working with finance department and sending collection agency notices and so forth. So that has been a bonus.
So the revenues from fines and things like that, correct?
Yep, fines, calls for service. So when we're out on the 400, we get paid for that. When we do a medical response, we get paid for that sometimes. We'll talk about that one later. Fire investigations, 5 structure fires were investigated last year. The causes of the fire, one was cooking. We had an open fire that was unsupervised. And then we had a fireworks that started a garage fire, and the other 2 are undetermined. Damage was too heavy to be able, we suspect something, but I have to be able to prove it when I call it. Vehicle fires, 5 vehicle fires were investigated. Mechanical, electrical, and then we have a suspected arson one on one. Next. Fire loss. So we have to report every fire that we attend, our loss. I don't like to just be negative. You can see this basically gives you what's happening, whether we're saving dollars or we're costing dollars. You can see that in, let me click on this one. In 2019, we lost more dollars than we saved. In 2020, we were pretty much even, 21 and 22. What I'm very, it's always hard to stop a fire, dealing with the amount of time it takes us to assemble and get there. But I'm glad to say we've had a couple commercial industrial fires in the last couple of years. And for me, one of my goals is, at the end of it, are they still paying tax dollars to the municipality? Because if we lose their building, we don't get that revenue, and that hurts everything. So to me, that's whether we won or lost, is do we still have that revenue? Because if we did it, then that means we did a great job and we've saved the building a municipal structure, anything to that. Next slide. Fire deaths and injuries. So this is one we paid very close to it. In the last 5 years, we've had 2 firefighters with minor injuries and 4 civilian injuries. And the injuries to the civilians is basically smoke inhalation. The 2 firefighters, one was a carbon monoxide poisoning. And the other one was a piece come down in off a building and hit him in the shoulder. So calls for service. This is just a pie graph just to give you a rough look at it. Picture's worth 1,000 words. As you can see, that medical response is almost 50% of our call volume, with the next piece being motor vehicle collisions. Actual fires is just a very small piece of the pie. Next slide. So there's our calls for service. The trend is the black line, and you can see the trend is climbing. It's not a lot, but it is slowly climbing. Last year's numbers was an exception that our numbers are climbing, and I'll be honest with you, this year, we're probably another 20% higher right now than we were last year at this time. So that is alarming for us. Next. So responses, we talked about the hours. The total number of calls last year was 241. Our 5-year average is 216. 5 calls were for automatic aid, 2 to Muskoka Lakes, and 2 into Severn Township. We received automatic aid 4 times from Muskoka Lakes, and that is as part of our agreements, that if we have a reported structure fire or somebody trapped in a vehicle, the Foots Bay Fire Hall joins the response with MAC tier to ensure we have it. 3 calls were given to mutual aid, 2 to assist Severn Township and 1 call to Bracebridge. The call to Bracebridge basically was myself to that call. The department responded 136 times during the day and 105 times during the evening. Weekday calls 161 compared to 80. Next. Staffing response. So you can see here, I break it down as per station and then overall in the department. So station 1 averages 2.9 to an emergency during the day and 3.2 during the evening hours.
Can you name your stations 1, 2, and 3, Matt, here? Honey
Certainly
Harbor,
can.
Port Severn?
So station 1 is Honey Harbor. Station 2 is Mac Tier, where they average 2.8 during the day and 5 people during the evening. Station 3 is Port Severn, and we average 5.2 during the day and 5.6 in the evening. The 5.2 is Chad and myself responding to those calls as well. They're included in that. Next. For the department, we average 7.9 people responding to an emergency during the day and 9.3 during the evening. The overall was 8.5. Overall average for responding to structure fires, we average 16.7 people, and we're putting an average of 14.5 people on the scene of a fire. Next. I'm going to tell you, here's where some of the things that give me gray hair, and you can see there's a fair amount there. There were 4 times when the station was called out and I didn't get a response.
That means that the station didn't respond,
Correct.
so there's no one available.
Correct. Station 2 was called out 3 times without a response. So that's MAC tier. And station 3 was called out once without a response. However, because we do a 2-station response now because of our numbers that are there, the primary station didn't respond, but the backup station did. So every emergency was attended to. So, okay. But I want you to know that it's not all roses. Next slide. Assembly time. The assembly time is from when the department, so when we are notified that there's an emergency that exists until we have an emergency vehicle that is moving. So station 1, Honey Harbor, they average 7 minutes and 45 seconds for that. And that means that a dispatcher now has to gather that information. They have 90 seconds to do that and then activate our pagers, the firefighters waking up, if it's at night, driving to the fire hall, if it's a snowstorm, cleaning off their vehicles, whatever. So their average was 7 minutes and 45 seconds. MAC tier was 8 minutes and 50 seconds, and Port Severn is 10 minutes and 3 seconds. The department assembly time overall was 8 minutes and 21 seconds.
Got to be impressed that the station on a dead end road had the highest response, the fastest response time. Got to shut it out for Honey Harbor on that one.
They're very quickly to get out. The problem is I don't have a lot of people there. The department averaged for our structure fires 6 minutes and 45 seconds. So I can tell you at night and stuff like that, when they know something is really moving, they seem to move a little quicker. We get the people coming. So next. Our response time is from the moment that we are notified that an emergency exists until the fire truck arrives. So there's your averages, station 1, 2, and 3, and the department. I want to tell you that in 2021, 48% of the time, we were over a 10-kilometer drive. In 2022, 81% of the time, we were over a 10-kilometer drive. So when you take some of that into consideration, that's why your time's high, and that's why when we're attending a structure fire, sometimes it's very difficult to save that building. Next. I know we've had a number of discussions where we talk about the ratepayers out on the water access only, not getting everything that the land, but I want to we take that very serious in the fire service. We're operating 3 boats at this time. Public Works has purchased a boat last year that when it's not being used by Public Works, we're keeping it as part of our arsenal. We're maintaining it now and being able to use it as we move forward. So Marine One, which is stationed at the Honey Harbor Boat Club, it was out 19 times for emergency response. Our Marine 3 out of Port Severn here was out 26 times. And 19 of those times would be that it's gone down into Honey Harbor to support Marine One in case we have a breakdown weather, or out on Honey Harbor. If we have a long run, we'll take off first with the boat and then we'll follow up with paramedics, because we can wait 40 minutes sometimes for a paramedic unit to show up. So that all gets assessed and that boat gets deployed as a backup safety line type of thing. We call Marine 5 as our bylaw. That's our little tin boat with the small motor on it. We used it one time for emergency response.
There are Marine 2 and 4.
No. And the only reason they're 1 and 3 is because of the station that they're at. Okay. The department uses, sometimes we're calling on private citizens to assist us. In 2022, we borrowed a scoot from one of our local residents to assist with an emergency response. I can tell you that with technology and that, we used a drone twice for emergency response, where a private citizen has, we've contacted that person to assist us. One was on for an ice water rescue where we didn't know where we were going. We deployed that person, they got the drone up and were able to give us a quick area of where we were going. And that person was pulled out and used it for another one where we were in that transition piece where the boats had been pulled out, but it was open water where the call was. So we flew a drone over top of it, took it down into the, looking into the windows, into the place, and it was a fire alarm and seen no smoke or anything like that. So at that point, we just stood by for the district chief stood by with that individual for a while and monitored that place, and we never actually went to that. So we were in contact with the property owner to ask him to come and check his property, and he refused to. So
I have a question.
yes,
In the previous 2 slides, you've got assembly time and response time. Do you have similar data for marine responses? I didn't see it in the presentation material.
no, I didn't put it in this, but I can pull those numbers very quickly. We have them.
Thank you.
I'll if all of council wants them, we can send them to you. Okay. Next.
Actually, if I can just add to that, if we're gonna pull them, can we differentiate between coastal and inland?
Yeah, it might take me a bit, but we have the capability of doing that.
mean, one, if it's on the bay, it would all be. in the
It'd be all
bay, and-
coastal.
And Marine three would be probably 50. You said
Marine three
19.
Marine three is the key one. The bylaw boat's been used several times and it was used in this instance because we were already at a call with the boat. So we had to deploy the bylaw boat to go up to Deer Island out here in Gloucester Pool to attend a resident, so. Next. Marine responses, so this is what the boat actually did, 13 medicals, 3 boat fires or accidents, 6 fire alarms, 3 structure fires. So there's your vessel time for the fire pumps was 62 hours. And 5 hours was used for inspections and investigations. Next. Medicals, as you can see from the chart, the medicals are on the climb. Last year, 113, our 5-year average is 81. The medical calls have increased by 83% over the last 5 years. 13 of those were water access. The 5-year average is 14.5. Calls on the water for medicals, they average 114 minutes. Last year, the previous year was 120 minutes. Compared to inland where a medical call is usually less than an hour. If it's more than an hour, there's something extraordinary, shall we say. Next. We are currently working on a new response agreement with the district. We've requested changes to the agreement 2 years ago. The district is, I'm going to say, doing some information gathering within their own system. And one of the reasons is that we want the water access. Why would the Township of Georgian Bay supplement the District of Muskoka paramedic services when the District of Muskoka gets 50 cents of every dollar paid by the provincial government? So pay us, use that expense, gather some funding and help us to purchase stuff we need to do the job properly. That's my, I'm going to say, theory. Working on it.
Bravo.
As you can see, 2 years ago, this started. We're looking for additional money for training and certification. As we go down this road, the training is becoming more costly with certification. And we're wanting the district to take that over from us because they have a doctor's license who they're currently working under. And we need that medical oversight. We're going to be needing it as we're going forward and I want the district to take that you provide my staff with the training that you want them to provide. And so those are some of the discussions that we're having. And
I think that's probably through a committee that Councillor Bocek is sitting on, and I know he'd be more than happy to turn up the heat.
So some of it is that with the pandemic brought some things to light that we need to, I'm going to say, deal with. And we need to work with that. And if this stalls, you can be rest assured that Councillor Bocek will be hearing from me. And so
I think it's also worth noting that there are significant hours in the day and week, months where there's zero paramedics from the district in our township. Because often the paramedics in MacTier are called away.
So I will tell you that for the first time in all of the times meeting with the paramedic chief, he agreed with me that the Township of Georgian Bay is underserviced. So that is, for him to start to recognize it, to me, that was a win, and now hopefully we can build. So.
Thank you.
With the new ambulance center being built in Glen Orchard, is there any availability of that for the north part of our township to assess or?
So we have the ambulance base in MacTier.
Yeah,
As the district is going through a deployment model study and all of that, there are some positive signs potentially for the township of Georgian Bay. You as the counselor sitting on that, I guess that rests with you in the financial piece that goes with that. But I'm gonna say I'm optimistic that we can get somewhere going forward. Is it going to happen in the next year or two? I highly doubt it, but as long as we can start that process and get it moving forward, and I'm really hoping that we can.
There's, if I may, there's been a study done by an organization out of Britain that's looked at all where the calls are coming from and so forth. And I think there's a, as you said, more recently, certainly I've been parroting all this as well, by the way, that there's really a need to have something in the southern portion of our township. Probably more than even the northern portion, because the northern portion also has service right next door, almost. So it's sort of duplicated up north and nothing down in the south. So all our service in the south is going to have to come in the meantime from Simcoe. So that's I think that's been acknowledged, and it never was before. It's I think what you're saying, and so we're trying to sing from the same hymn book. Thank you.
Okay, next slide. Firefighter certification. I'm not going to dwell a lot on this. I think you're well aware of that. We're working towards it. The budget show what we needed to do, and hopefully we can make this work here sooner than later. We have till 2024 to get our firefighter certified for firefighter 1 and 2, and you can see that we're pretty darn close there now. So I don't see any problem with that. And for the technical rescues, we have till 2026. And I believe we have a very good foothold right now to be able to meet that goal. So next. We'll just keep going. We'll keep going. Next generation 911. So that is coming. So the old 911 system is old and needs to be retired, I guess is the easiest way to say it. So with that, there is a new generation of 911 coming. Part of this new generation 911 is that we need to be able to communicate through text, videos, and some of the social media platforms that are out there. Currently, the District of Muskoka pays for our 911 system, and it's a contract through the District of Muskoka with the Ontario Provincial Police in North Bay. That all goes up to there. North Bay OPP then send it to whatever I'm going to say the next level of response. So if it's ambulance, police, or fire, then it goes to that respective dispatching. So our dispatching service is provided by the City of Barrie. The City of Barrie is upgrading their dispatching system currently. They've applied for funding through the provincial grant to hopefully offset those costs. Speaking with the fire chief in Barrie, there was quite a bit of concern as how much is that going to cost this municipality, and could have quite an effect on our budget. As of right now, we're hoping that this is all going to be covered by some grants that are available, and we may see a nominal fee going forward. Our dispatching fees have increased dramatically this year, not because of 911, but because of the population growth, because our dispatching agreement is based by population. So our permanent population has gone from 2,500 to 3,491, I think it is, and our seasonal residents. So they pay $3 and our seasonal residents are paying $1.20. So we keep those numbers. So we're always tracking those numbers to the best of our ability for our dispatching fees. So since we moved to that model with Barry, our dispatching fees have gone down. So I'm hoping that that increase is not going to bring it higher than we were a few years ago. Next. I think you're well aware of that. I think a couple of things I wanted to highlight on it is that our self-contained breathing apparatus, we've narrowed down from 36 units to 18. That's when you're paying $7,000 for each one of those units, that's a considerable savings. And then going from the rescue truck that we had to the pickup truck as a support vehicle, I think we've saved a fair amount of funding with that as well. So we're out constantly looking, trying to save the funds as much as we can. Next. Moving forward, the municipality has to provide a community risk assessment. I'm working with the officers of the department now. We've started to work on that. Most municipalities are hiring out for a consultant to do it. I've chose to do it in-house for the costs, and this community risk assessment will be used as part of the master fire plan. And we will review the top 10 risks for our community and then formulate risk assessment plans with some strategies to, I'm going to say, either mitigate those risks, accept those risks, or even transfer some of those risks if we can.
Chief, on a slightly related topic, AEDs in the township and in our different facilities, do we maintain AEDs, community centers, arena? And
So-
are those on a replacement cycle as well?
So they're part of our asset management plan. There's only one unit that I can't, as part of our agreement, have serviced. Because it was a AED that was purchased. And is not my service contract with who the fire department uses. We're actually servicing all of the units come Thursday. They get serviced every 2 years and recertified. We includes all the parts and everything for them. So that's my day on Thursday, is going around to all of those AEDs to do that.
And Chief, I have one question. I note that the CRA, the Canadian Revenue Agency, is helping us out on these things as well.
Yeah. I
We gotta be
wish,
careful with how we use these things. That's all.
I wish.
Just wonder, any idea how many AEDs you'll be servicing on Thursday?
I did have the number earlier this week. It's about 13 of them. That includes the arenas and to be honest with you, I can't even tell you where they all are right now. It's all I know is there's a list sitting on the corner of my desk. So
As long as they know that they're there in the facility, that's the
So
important.
yes, and the one unit there's 2 units that are at the community center in MacTier. One is that we service, the other one we can't, and it's up for replacement this year because we can't get anybody to service it. So it's being replaced with a unit that will fall in line with what we're using. Because then we can use the same pads, and as part of our tiered medical response agreement is I'm trying to get that pushed off to the district that they service any of those AEDs and provide the training. So
Do you only service your owned versions, or do you service private ones?
we're only servicing the units that are owned by the municipality. I know there's a AED that's out at the
Schoolhouse.
yeah, and I don't know who's servicing that.
Okay.
Most times when they purchase them, there's service agreements that are made, but I can't tell you.
But it was your organization that used it back in 2020 to apparently save a life.
Quite possible, yes. Next. Recruitment and retention is a big chore for us. So we're allowed 60 volunteers. We currently have 43. I know the first slide was 44, but I had an individual who just left. Well, it was, yeah. So 25% vacancy rate. 42 firefighters have been recruited in the last 5 years, and 32 of them have resigned in the last 5 years. I can tell you that this is not a Georgian Bay problem. This is a province of Ontario problem. I can tell you that much. We're doing our best to get what we can. Next slide. We're conducting some exit interviews to try to identify some themes of what's causing our people to leave. And the top three are right here. It's no reasonably priced housing for younger adults to be able to live in the area. So they're not here. People that are 60 years of age are not interested in joining, shall we say. They're limited what they can do. There's no work in the area, so people are moving to where the jobs are. And the third one was the time commitment needed to stay. The current training and the number of call outs and all of that's being thrown in there. So 32 members left the department in the last 5 years, with 14 members that have moved away. 14 members could no longer make the commitment, and then for various reasons such as family pressures, no longer to be able to do it. And then we had to leave, I'm going to say, for legitimate reasons of retirement, which I think is a good thing, seeing it's getting closer. So we do try to see if it was our, I can tell you that some people don't always agree with where we're going, and sometimes I don't agree where we're going either. I have my own opinions, but I have to follow, I'm going to say, the rules of the road. Next. So some things that we've been working on. I'm pleased to say that we had our first discussion with Muskoka Lakes to look at some efficiencies. We'll see where that one goes. They're doing a study right now, and correct me, CAO, if you wanted to add into it, but one of the things is that they've asked that we partake in a piece of that study that they're doing. So we're at least talking farther than we were before. We're working on the Moose Deer Assistance Agreement. We found an agreement that was made in, I believe it's 1985, and we're trying to clean that up now and be able to help our neighbors, but also for our neighbors to help us. So working on the community risk assessment. Towards the end of the year, we'll start to work on the master fire plan update. We'll be looking at the facilities review, our records management program for the fire department. We've been using a software program called Firehouse. We were told it was going to be discontinued to be supported a couple of years ago, but their new product's not here yet, so they're continuing to support the old one. So we haven't had to purchase it yet. We're looking at training partnership with Southwest Fire Academy, the tiered response agreement, and that's just to name a few of the things that we're currently working on. Next slide, and I think that's it.
Well, thank you very much. There was a lot of information you gave us over the last couple of hours, or almost couple hours, and we really appreciate that. And we thank you for it. I'm sure I'm speaking for all of us that we actually learned quite a few things from all this. You're busier than the lack of sirens would suggest, if I can put it that way. I mean,
Yeah, and we're just how things are progressing. We've had 3 structure fires already this year. We've had some losses, but we've also had some wins. As I've told my staff, being able to pull somebody out of 6 Mile Lake and have a successful save, not very often does that happen in a career. So we need to be very positive of that save. We saved, we had a fire at one of our local establishments here. The building was closed for a week and back open because of, so we had a win that the tax dollars kept coming in, so. We've been extremely busy this year.
well, I say on behalf of all our residents, we appreciate that you're there as soon as we call. You may. You turn your mic on.
Oh, there it is. I turned it off. Years ago, our CAO, Lori Kennard, had an initiative to take counselors to the Toronto airport, don the fire gear, put out fires and use the jaws of life to open up vehicles. And what it did, it gave council, or the members of council that participated, a real good envision of what you go through and what is needed. And there were seminars during that impressed upon us to support the fire department and why they need the funding they need and why they need that. We came back with a different perspective and a different appreciation to our firefighting department. I'm wondering if there's any plan to do anything like that in the future in order to educate council on really what the actions need to be taken by our fire department.
It's a interesting piece, Counselor. I can tell you the service that was being done by the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs was fallen by the dodo bird with that piece. However, first step is that we're in the midst with all of the District of Muskoka right now is to arrange the essentials of firefighting protection, working with the clerk's department to do a training session, something like what you had in January. One piece it will be emergency management. So anybody who's wishing to partake in that, and then that would be in the morning session and in the afternoon session, doing it about firefighting. And then the conversation I've had with a number of fire chiefs is that we would like to set up a Saturday because it's a fair amount of work and a long time commitment that was required was to be able to demonstrate some of those activities and give the counselor the opportunity that if you want to go into a live fire and see some live fire conditions, we could do that at the Port Sydney Fire Station.
Awesome. I think that would be a great education for council. And I know that when I took part in it, my attitude around funding certain things in the fire department did a 180. Once you're exposed to how could you do the job without the equipment type of thing. So I think it's a value for training for council as well too. And I appreciate your initiative doing that with district.
And if you're interested, please speak to Karen, because Karen, I'm gonna say voluntarily told to assist me with doing that. We discussed it at our MERC meeting and Karen graciously accepted to assist me to do that. So
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it.
I also, I think, council, that we don't know all 42 of those volunteer firefighters or whatever the number is right now. But I can tell you the few that I have met, I've been highly impressed by their I'll call it their attitude, how much they are interested in and appreciate the opportunity to serve the communities. And I think that they're an invaluable asset. Fortunately, mostly hidden because we don't need them all the time, but it's good that they're there.
We used to have a dinner. You remember
Mhm.
all the firefighters and all the counselors and all the
Yep.
staff would get together and
I think that was a great value too, because I got to meet a lot of young, women and men, service communities and, physical contact with these people that really open your eyes. You have a bad habit of turning your mic off every time you speak, and you just did it.
I can let you know, Counselor, that as you're well aware of the spaghetti dinners that I did a number of years ago. My firefighters have asked that come back instead of the formal dinner. They enjoyed the I guess the atmosphere. I know it was hectic for me for a day or two, but so that was one of their, as we've been constantly doing SWOT analysis with them. And that was one of the things that they've asked to come back. So we're probably going to forego the formal Christmas dinner that we were doing and go back to the spaghetti dinner. And with that was that I'm not at the training sessions like we used to be. It's because they find it disruptive because everybody wants to talk to me. So we've gone now for a year and a half of me not being there, just making it so you know how to get a hold of me and that kind of stuff. And so to keep that tie is we were looking to possibly do a barbecue this summer. And if council wishes, we can make that happen and invite you that you can have some discussion with them.
That would be greatly appreciated. Any other comments from anyone? Again, I'm going to say thank you very much to you and to the fire department, and we appreciate the report and all the work you put into it and the time you spent presenting it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, please thank everybody else. Great, council. We got one more item, and I'm going to suggest we do it. And then when we take a break for lunch, we're breaking for a long time. Oh, and by the way, we messed up. We never approved the agenda for today. So, okay, I'm glad you reminded us. No. So I have moved by Councillor Jarvis, seconded by Councillor Cooper. Be it resolved that Committee of the Whole adopts the agenda of April 4th, 2023 as circulated. All those in favor? That is carried, thankfully. And moved by Councillor Predko, second by Councillor Bocek. Be it resolved that council receives the 2022 annual report from Fire and Emergency Services for information. All those in favor? And that has been carried. And our final item on the agenda that we have now approved is a motion from Councillor Graziano. So Councillor Graziano, would you like to speak to that?
Thank you, Your Worship. Two components to the motion. One is a means in which to interact with staff in a non-business context. So being outside through some sort of council staff appreciation day. Councillor Bocek, in a conversation that I had brought to my attention that in the past, council would get together and cook for staff outside in the summertime, and thought it was a great idea to see if we can bring that back, albeit some here in staff may not appreciate a vegan meal, but they'll get a good one if they endeavor to come over to my little stand. So with that being said, thought it'd be a great idea to now post-COVID or with COVID behind us, re-bring it back or retable this item back as a possible event that we can all capitalize on and enjoy each other's company with. Also, along with that, perhaps some fun ways of getting to know each other. And so getting an opportunity to perhaps go through our office here and interact with others as where they sit and get to know what they do and so on. With that being said, also looked at bringing back not bringing back, rather adding on to the personality color assessments. Given that we have some new staff, and we'll likely continue to add new staff throughout the course of the year, as well as some new counselors on staff, perhaps those that are new go through the personality assessment, so we can all understand how we all work with each other. And at the same time, maybe it's worthwhile, revisiting, those in the SMT and what colors they are. And I know that we do post those colors at each other's offices, but perhaps we can have a quick discussion around who does or who's what color. So that's the motion, and over to council.
Thank you. Any staff response before I go to council? No, having, oh, CEO Marriott.
Oh, were you going to Karen?
Aye.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kutsia. And yes, absolutely. Pre-COVID, the township would host an annual barbecue with councillors gladly flipping burgers and vegan hot dogs and all that stuff. So this was going to be on the agenda for this year. And now that we have established a social committee, that was going to be forthcoming to council. So that's on the cards. And in terms of ongoing team building, is exactly as Councillor Graziano had mentioned. Just one day is great, but it's good to have council pop in, especially now that the summer months are upon us. When you're coming up to the cottage, pop in, say hello, and don't just talk shop, talk family. So totally on board with that.
Okay, Councillor Bocek, followed by Cooper and then Fredco.
Yeah, Councillor Graziano and I talked about this a few times, and I think it was one of the things that brought council and staff closer together and understood personalities and traits that you may not get when you're in an authoritative position up here at the table. So I support this 100%, and I think the cost factor that goes along with this, I've already spoken to some area suppliers that are more than happy to support this in the way of food and drinks and not beer. Unfortunately. But it is supported by me, and I really want this to happen. I think it's a necessity.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor, and a great idea. Certainly support it and encourage it. I sort of a somewhat associated to this is I would like to suggest that where it's important for us to get to know each other and understand our colors, another way to sort of move forward, shall we say, in our understanding is to encourage input from our communities to understand who they are. And so orientation, and I don't mean orientation about the rules of the township, but orientation of what we're looking after. And so I would like to suggest perhaps with our CAO and some of the staff to some of us may want to submit some suggestions for an orientation program that could help with that understanding of who and what we are. Specifically, I think of things like maybe taking 10 or 15 minutes at the front end of our committee of the whole session, bringing in people to present various things about community areas, maybe our overall history. There's a variety of different things that could help both our council, but frankly, our staff as well. So I would maybe lob this one over to my neighbor here and ask him to give some thought to that as to making sure that we really know what we've got here and how special it is. So that's my suggestion. Thank you.
Councillor Fredco.
Thank you, Your Worship. So my only question, and there's nothing more that I like more than flipping burgers. So obviously nothing more. My only comment would be that I'd like to ask for a friendly amendment to the motion. And rather than specifying personality tests to be specified in this, I would like for the motion to refer to a team building exercise decided upon by the social committee, so that this is really a staff-led event rather than a council dictated event. I think if we have a social committee, they would be best positioned to know what is the most appropriate activity for us to do.
Are you? I'm trying to understand your friendly amendment in the first one is to asking staff to coordinate a staff appreciation day, but
It's
giving
spec-
examples as opposed to directing. And the second one is staff coordinate continuation of.
Personnel, I'm asking for the amendment to not be specific to the personality tests, but to be something that the social committee feels is an appropriate team building exercise.
Oh,
Are they together?
No, I think they're two separate.
the one is, I
Gotcha.
would argue that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councilor Graziano, but I would argue the first one is social and the second one is personnel,
Okay.
yeah, but they're a separate item.
They are two separate items,
Yeah.
yes. They are gonna happen at two separate times. They were amalgamated into one, given that contextually they make sense to amalgamate, given that in one hand, this is all about us interacting with each other. However, they're two separate items in one suggested motion.
So I guess my only comment then is, do we, and I can leave this to ask the CAO to comment on this, is participating in personality testings with council, is this something that your staff is comfortable doing? I'm being new to the environment here. I don't know if that's.
Actually, you make a good point, Councillor Predko, and it's an interesting one, because really you need to get the buy-in and the acceptance of whoever is doing that personality test. And I know I've seen stickers, yes, on doors before with different colors, and yeah, I mean, I can be whatever color you want. At the end of the day, it's how you and I interact, you know. And staff here, I think you've heard a couple of months ago, I think I've got the support of staff and they have no idea what color I am. So, I mean, we do need to, you know, I mean, if council wants to share the results, that's great. It's up to council if they want to go ahead with this additional cost and testing. And then I need to check with my staff if there are one or two individuals who are new who may not wish to display their color on the door.
And then I guess, do we know what the budget amount would be for this, since we just passed the budget and I guess we don't really have a line item? If it's, you know, nominal, I'm not concerned, but if it's going to be hiring a consultant, we may need to talk about it.
There was a quote that was obtained, I believe Jen Schneier or maybe Miss Seymour obtained a quote. I think it was about $4,000 to do everyone. If that was the case, to go ahead. And I'm not sure, depending on which testing we use, if it's good to refresh that, because obviously if it's done several years ago, sometimes your traits may change. So yeah.
So that would be, I guess, my two concerns about staff wanting to participate in the cost that we'd have to incur that we didn't plan for in the budget.
I do. I can just attest to the value of this from the past two that I participated in. And I know initially when I came onto council, I didn't know the personalities of the offices I was going into, and I was afraid. But when I found out that Jennifer Schneier happened to be a yellow, I knew when I entered her office that it was going to be lighthearted and entertaining and be enjoyable. Yet when I went into Chief Van Dam's office, I knew he was a red, and I better have my guard up and be very aware of what I'm saying and how I interact with them. So for me personally, it was a great lesson, and it was very valuable. And I don't need that. A person like myself would need to go through it again. And I'm not sure that people have that have done it before need to go through it again. So there could be some cost savings that were there, but I think it's a great value.
Are we still
myself, personally?
Are we still able to?
No, no,
This is open
Yeah.
free.
No, this is not free. This is we're back to regular format. So I'm gonna recognize Councillor Jarvis first. Councillor Jarvis.
Yeah, I'm wondering if maybe we could separate that into two motions. I think the concept of getting everybody together is really a good idea. I think a little staff and council interaction is really important. And maybe after that, we can get a better assessment of how people feel about going ahead with the concept of the colors, which I think is a good one. I mean, we did it, I think we did my first term. Yeah, and it was good exercise. I don't think anybody came away upset about it. Obviously, Brian had his reservations going into a few people's offices afterwards, but I don't think I did. It's just, it's kind of neat to know where people are.
Councillor Graziano.
Thank you, Your Worship. Allow me to address a misconception. The intent of this was not to force feed a color personality assessment onto anybody, rather make it voluntary. You're welcome to participate if you'd like, and you're welcome to opt out if you'd like. And if costs are prohibitive, then perhaps we forego this and remove it completely off the motion and just have a way in which we can all do a barbecue without beer. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple of comments. One is this motion is basically covering things that used to be done without motions required because it was coordinated by staff, and COVID sort of reared its ugly head and maybe even budget deliberations. But I do recall doing the colors exercise 4 years ago at the beginning of that term, and my impression was a lot of people had a lot of fun with it. Because it was almost like oh, what color are you? Oh, I'm more red than you are. No, I'm more blue. Nobody was upset about it, and it could be that one or two staff members were upset and they didn't attend. I don't remember. I have no idea. Councillor Cooper.
I think that was a very good exercise, and I know a lot of the yellows felt attacked by a lot of the reds, but anyway.
I don't think there is a pink or a peach though, unfortunately.
Well, and it was kind of fun because we discovered that we had a lot more reds than an average group would, and whether that's a good or bad thing was well debated.
I just want to point out, I felt left out because I'm red-green colorblind and I'd read.
Councillor Graziano.
Yeah, if I can make one additional point. Yes, these were all things that were done through staff, through our social committee and perhaps other committees. And I think perhaps given COVID and how it impacted us and had removed these events, maybe this is just a reaffirmation of council's intent of wanting to maintain and continue these programs, and just sending a message to staff saying we'd love these programs to continue on.
I mean, where I was going to go with my comments is I have no trouble supporting this motion. I would, under normal circumstances, perhaps suggest it's not necessary, but given post-COVID and post-budget, I think it's actually a good motion. That's my comment. Any other comments? No, the motion says staff coordinate, so you speak to staff. Councillor Predko, you wanted to follow up?
Yeah, I mean, I guess just really trying to understand if this is something that is accommodated in the budget without us having, if this was a staff-led initiative, would you have already had money in the budget for this kind of event, or is this additional?
So the barbecue is within the budget because that is something that staff had planned a while back to do anyway this summer. The personality testing, and it sounds to me like this personality testing could be a team building testing as well. So now we're talking about not just doing a couple of new counselors. Now we're talking about using this testing as a way to build a team, a relationship together with senior staff. And so that cost would be the $4,000.
And would that be within a budget line item that we have, or is this going to be a reserve item?
I would have to check with Ms. Buthalet. I know it's not been budgeted for, so I have to come back to you.
Councilor Graziano.
Yes, if I make a suggestion as well, I'd be willing to incur the costs of the meal that I'm going to be cooking for staff. And so if we as council wish to donate, then I think we can put back the costs that would have been otherwise allocated to the barbecue back in the personality test. So just
No.
you'll get a burger and you're gonna love it, trust me. So,
May I make a suggestion? I mean, the first line says staff proceed to coordinate a staff appreciation day, so okay. And the second line say that staff consider the continuation, in other words, come back to us with a proposal with regards to that. Because I think personally, if we could make it a day or a half day, council and staff together having some fun, that would be healthy for all of us.
I think at this point, if maybe in the motion, it should include that staff be allowed to spend up to $4,000 to do the personality testing as part of the team building day.
Are you willing, council, to add a dollar amount? Councilor Cooper?
I'd be willing to add that, but I'd also like to make it a little bit, not only specific to that, but make it broader, that we consider other initiatives to build our team and awareness and orientation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not trying to give our CAO a huge job, but rather to at least open up the scope of what we can do or not do. That's all.
Okay, so I'm doing a few things here that staff, I'm going to say, consider. And I'm going to check this with the mover and seconder by the time we're done with. The staff consider the continuation of the college personality assessment for new members of council and staff who not receive and coordinate and propose. No, now I'm trying to make it simple. Now I'm making it complicated. I have to get a new sentence. One moment, please. And that. Sure, why not? Well, that would have to come. Okay. No. No, okay, okay. Here's what where I'm working at. We know the first one being staff proceed to coordinate staff appreciation day. Second one, that staff consider the continuation of color personality assessment. And that staff propose a council staff not appreciation, team building exercise with a budget of up to $4,000 from reserve. Because that then you might then coordinate it all together. I mean, what we're basically doing, saying to staff, please help us in these realms. Oh, no, now you're making it more complicated on me.
You just said a bunch of words that are not on this paper.
Oh,
Did you not notice that?
okay.
And that
Staff coordinate
a
council
staff
staff
team
building
exercise.
exercise.
can I make an amendment to that?
Absolutely,
Just
absolutely.
while she's writing it? Perhaps that we request that staff, specifically vis-a-vis Ms. Bouquet, look at ways to fund this through what we currently have budgeted, and as an alternative, then look to reserves, but present back to us whether it'll come from one or the other.
Okay.
And
You didn't turn your mic on.
Did I say something?
If I just add and report back to council with costs,
Yeah,
do you want, is that?
I think that's.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay. and then I'm just,
It goes and that, okay,
yeah,
and that staff coordinate council and staff team building exercise up to $4,000 of the working fund reserve for the above initiatives and report back to council with costs.
well, we're doing it, just get rid of the working fund reserve, come back with costs, and then part of that report will include how it's going to be funded.
So just delete this whole part.
And I'm going to take the second paragraph and really shorten it down and simply say that staff consider the continuation of colors, personality assessments. Full stop, because then whether we do the whole crew or just a few. All right, so Councilors Graziano and Bocek, because you're the mover and the seconder, I will, after I read it, you have to confirm. Councilor Bocek, are you paying any attention?
I'm just reading off of his.
Huh?
We're reading the resolution.
Oh, okay. So once I read this, I would like Councilors Graziano and Bocek to confirm if they consider it a friendly amendment. And then after that, if they do, we'll call a vote. So moved by Councilor Graziano, second by Councilor Bocek, be it resolved that staff proceed to coordinate a staff appreciation day, for example, a barbecue or team building event, together with fun ways to get to know each other in person, along with the social committee. And that staff consider the continuation of the color personality assessments. And that staff coordinate a staff team building exercise. Where we go here? Because
Building.
we already have that, but that's
exercise.
really already up here.
I know, and
Oh,
report back to council with costs.
The staff and consider it staff building exercises and exercise initiatives and report back to council with costs.
Can I make an amendment to that?
Yeah, you may.
So can we not just say that staff consider the continuation of the color personality assessment? Or as an alternative, consider as team building or alternative team building exercises and report back to council.
Yeah, or, okay, what do? And.
I have a concern because we're getting really
Yeah.
wishy-washy now. Because now we're going to have 3-4 months of discussions. Well, have you thought of this? And then staff goes back with another report and have you thought of that? So let's start. We've got to be a little more clearer.
Well, and also, we're in the committee of the whole. So this thing in theory won't be cemented
True.
until next month. Can we, instead of going through this, simply give staff verbal direction?
I'm
That
fine with
works.
Okay, so staff, based on the discussion we've had to date, do you need anything more from us?
We'll come back next month with something.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
And by the
Okay.
way, I've been told that prior to COVID, for those of you who were here on council before COVID, it was the councillors who did donate the food. Is that correct? Okay, so.
And I'm prepared to do that again. So
Yeah. I'll just let,
If the food's being
Okay.
donated, then the money is available in the budget from the staff event.
all right. So with all that, are we ready for my next motion? And that is be it moved by, oh, you didn't tell us who's moving it. So
Oh,
I'm going to say moved by Councillor Hazelton because he was already packing up. Seconded by Councillor Cooper, who's already packed up. Be it resolved, the committee of the whole does not adjourn?
oh,
Typo.
man, we're doing well on this.
Does now adjourn at 12:26 PM to reconvene on May 9th, 2023, or at the call of the chair. Absolutely.
I'd just like to thank everybody for their efforts in the immaculate conception that we just went through.
you're not.
Pardon me?
You're not.
Immaculate conception.
I would call it vote.
Okay. All those in favor? And that is of the motion read.